Good afternoon, everybody. Just wait one more minute here. We'll let everybody get settled and begin. Welcome, everybody, to the fourth episode of the conference's Spread Respect conversation. For those that I don't know, my name is Kate Bergstrom, and I am the Senior Associate Commissioner here at the League. And I'm going to just begin with a couple housekeeping items before we jump in. As you can tell, slightly different format than those previous conversations that we had. It is, for me at least, lovely to see many of your faces. We're planning to get into small group discussions. That is what is different about today's Spread Respect conversation. We're looking to take one step from listening and learning into starting to have dialogue with one another. Not only is that slightly a bit different, but our two speakers, Keith and Nancy, also will have interactive parts of their presentation and are expecting that you in the audience will engage with them, and we'll talk a little bit about how that works. So, like I said, it's great to see all of your faces, and I want to quickly at the top just thank everybody for their time and investment. We at the conference office know that this final week of August is one of the most chaotic of probably your professional career thus far, and it's been a challenging road to get to where you are. So for you to take time out of a day like today and spend it here with us learning and investing in this topic really means a great deal, and we're appreciative. Today's conversation will feature Dr. Nancy S. Kaplan, Associate Provost at St. John's University, and Keith L. Lee, the President of Lee Legacy Enterprises. Keith and Nancy joined us last October at our Spread Respect Forum in Vermont, and we were just astounded at the positive feedback that we got from attendees after that, and knew that we were going to immediately need to find more ways to engage and have them be a part of this conference. We're lucky that they're here and excited to hear what they have to teach us. The two are going to speak specifically on white privilege, implicit bias, microaggressions, and what it means to be anti-racist. So I'm going to run really quickly through some housekeeping items just to acknowledge the sort of the different format we have today. This conversation is being recorded. Nothing in the breakout rooms will be recorded. We really just want to capture what Nancy and Keith have to say, but we'll be sensitive and mindful that we want you guys to participate and feel comfortable doing so. As the host, we have muted everybody, and the default mode will be mute, just to sort of control the noise potentially from the background. You won't be able to unmute yourself until we provide that ability for you to do so. But as I mentioned, parts of Keith and Nancy's presentation is intended to be interactive. So we're going to ask for you to interact with us in two ways. One is use the chat fit function, which is enabled. So put your comments, your questions, your responses when Keith and Nancy have questions to you in the chat function. And then also, if there is an opportunity for maybe a more in-depth piece of feedback, there's the raise your hand function. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how you can find that if you're not familiar. So look, use chat, use raise your hand. And in order to find the raise your hand function, what you'll do is just click on the participants button at the bottom, and you will see at the bottom right, there should be a raise hand opportunity for you to raise your hand. And then at that point, we'll be able to unmute you. And then last but not least, for housekeeping at least, the optimal view is speaker view. So at the top, instead of looking at all the tiny boxes, it's best to be able to see the presentation and see Keith and Nancy if you click speaker view at the top right corner of your Zoom window. And then as always, we are committed to Spread Respect conversations. They are not one-offs. They're a methodical approach to trying to keep this initiative and dialogue with an intentional focus. So before we even begin episode 4, we're going to talk about episode 5 and tease it out. So in our 5th episode, which will premiere on September 17th from 12 to 1, we will have 2 amazing women from Binghamton University. We'll have Dr. Sharon Bryant, and Dr. Sharon Bryant is the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Decker College. And then we will also have Monica Major from Binghamton University's Watson College. And Monica is the campus director, co-principal investigator, and assistant dean of academic diversity and inclusive excellence. Those 2 are going to speak about how you recruit diverse candidates and create a sense of belonging within your organization. Attendees like yourself will leave the session with tangible action steps and takeaways in order for you to figure out how to help create more diverse excellence within your organization and an inclusive culture within the athletics departments. So join us on September 17th from 12 to 1. Marcus is going to drop the registration link in the chat so you can get signed up as early as today, and we encourage you to do that. And then the other small teaser I will say is we've had you fill out surveys over the past couple of episodes, and a lot of the feedback has been incorporating student athletes into that. So we will have episodes 6, 7, and 8 feature student athletes and highlighting their experiences. So more details to come, and stay tuned. As always, quick plug for you to continue the conversation on social media using #SpreadRespect, and then also fill out the survey at the end, which Marcus will drop in the chat, and then also at the end of the breakout rooms, we'll drop in the chat again. And without further ado, just want to give a proper introduction to our 2 speakers. So first we have Dr. Nancy Kaplan, longtime educator, community advocate, and a proponent of social justice. Kaplan has spent her career in higher education at St. John's University and currently is in the role of Associate Provost. She has overseen a wide variety of programs related to academics, student affairs, and athletics. As a proponent of social justice, Dr. Kaplan has spent the past 15 years as a workshop facilitator for a number of anti-bias organizations, including Nassau County Holocaust and Tolerance Center, the Institute for Sport and Social Justice, and the Anti-Defamation League. She is also, fun fact, married to Lenny Kaplan, who serves as the Director of Athletics at our very own newest member, NJIT. Couldn't not say it, Nancy. And then Keith Lee serves as the president of the Lee Legacy Enterprises and as the vice president and COO of this Institute for Sport and Social Justice. He has been instrumental in the development of the Institute, a nationwide network of over 280 colleges and universities that implement educational and community service and support programs for student athletes, coaches, and administrators. Over the past 30 years, Keith has facilitated and directed thousands of development workshops for sports organizations around the country. Keith grew up in LA, where he was a star athlete and enjoyed an All-American career before being drafted by the Buffalo Bills as a defensive back. And as I mentioned, when I was just talking to them in a small group, I couldn't not say that Keith also played in the NFL for 6 years on the New England Patriots, which for our Boston headquarters feels special. So with that, I will turn it over to Nancy and Keith to get us going. So thanks so much, you 2.
Thank you so much, Kay. We appreciate the opportunity to share this discussion. We had such a great time when we came to the Spread Respect forum a few months ago, and every time we do a workshop, it's not a matter of only teaching others or educating others. We learn as much as our participants learn also. So, and that's part of why we're here today, is that addressing these issues in our society, especially right now, we have to understand that it's a process. It never ends. You never have all the answers, but it's the journey toward those answers that's important. So I am just so thrilled to be able to share with you today with my partner, Nancy Kaplan, and you heard her background, but more importantly, she's an authentic person who believes in every word she says. And so I have a lot of respect for my sister there, Nancy Kaplan. But we're gonna, our goal today is to create a comfortable environment, a safe space. Our other goal is to share what we've learned over these past 3 decades. And then the final goal is to have you interact and to have great discussions. Remember, there's no dumb question, not at all. That's how we learn. I learned that. I've been married for almost 34 years. And I learned that it's okay to ask a question if you truly don't know. I learned that the hard way. So, and I'm reminded of it. If you don't know, ask. So our first part of this session, I'm gonna turn over to my partner, Nancy Kaplan. She's gonna lead us through white privilege and what that means.
Yeah, thanks, Keith. You know, one of the things that we recognize in having these conversations is that there's so much terminology that's being used that, you know, many of us just don't have a lot of experience talking about. And one of those terms that's out there right now is this one, white privilege. And you can see the definition up there for yourself. So I'm not going to read through it, but I do want to say this. And Keith, I'll just ask you to hide the presentation for 1 second, just
Okay.
for this part of it, because I just do want to see faces. One of the things that, you know, we know is that this is a term that is often misunderstood. And it's misunderstood by many white people who really need to be engaged in this conversation. One of the things that I've heard most over the last few months is really about the importance of white people leading conversations and not being afraid to really talk about the issues that exist. And so this particular term is one that I think it's important that we begin with. And I would just like to, you know, throw out this particular question to you, is that when you hear that term white privilege, how does that make you feel when you hear that term? And you can just type into the chat how it makes you feel, or what comes to mind, and you can also raise your hand. I just want to hear some comments on that. Anybody?
Hi, am I free to speak? I'm unmuted?
Yeah. Yes.
Hi,
Please.
hi, Nancy. Mike Murphy. I'm from University of New Hampshire. The white privilege, to me, oblivious is a big word. It was something I never thought of until it became pretty clear that it was something I've had all along. And you think of privilege, you think, oh, I'm rich and everything else. But to understand all the things you could take for granted because of being white, that's what it means to me.
Nancy, you're muted.
Okay, thank you. Denise, I saw your hand up.
For me, sadly, it's a normalcy and an everyday occurrence that I have to come in contact with. So for me, it's a sense of just, sadly, normalcy.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that too, Denise. You know, this is a term that really, you know, for so many people, it's just part of something that we know exists. And then for other people, you know, mostly white people, it's not something that we ever think about. And one of the things that, you know, we know from doing this work is that, you know, it's important to acknowledge and understand that it exists if we're truly interested in creating environments that are fair and equitable and safe for everyone to be in. And so for those of us that have never, you know, really thought about it and what it looks like, we compiled some examples. I'll ask Keith to share the PowerPoint. And I would ask everyone, as you read through the examples, maybe just pick out one that either surprises you or that resonates with you. So we'll start the examples now. So you don't feel pressure to represent your race. People don't make assumptions about your intelligence because of your race. You can be articulate and well-spoken without being surprised. People will trust that you deserve to be where you are. You don't have to think or worry about interactions with police. You can wear and act however you'd like without being labeled a thug, a lowlife, or a gangster. No one questions why you got that really great job. It's assumed that you are just highly qualified. You don't have to worry about being monitored in a store just because the hue of your skin is a bit darker than most. Your wages aren't lower because of your race. Jobs won't discriminate against you due to your race, including based on your name. You'll never be labeled a terrorist. And you won't internalize negative stereotypes that have been perpetuated into American society. So as you read through those terms, Keith, let's go back to the previous slide, and then we can hide them for a second just so I could see faces. I'd love to know from folks what resonates with you about any of those that you heard. Something that surprises you, something that is disappointing to you. What comes to mind?
And we did allow you the ability to unmute yourself. So go ahead.
Hi, this is LaTanya from NJIT. My hometown is Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and Kenosha is just outside of Milwaukee. So I'm having a really, really difficult time during this week because of what's been happening there. You don't have to think or worry about interactions with police. It resonates very, very heavily with me. I also raised my younger brother, who happens to be 34 now. But when we have to have conversations with our younger children, make sure you don't, put your hands in your pocket when you're in a store. Don't touch anything that you don't intend on buying. Making sure that, if they get stopped, and actually we don't even say if, it's when. Because we're expecting that these things happen, that we have to teach our young people how to survive, just survive. And I will just say this, I got stopped one time when I was living in DC, and I was pulling in front of my own house at 12:30 in the morning after we had just finished playing on the road at Navy. I'm tired, not speeding at all, and I thought nothing of it. And I see a cop car pull up behind me with their lights on. I get out of the car because I'm in front of my house, and I don't think that I did anything wrong. Well, I could have been shot. So not having to think or worry about interactions with police. And the reason why they said that they stopped me was because they saw something hanging from my rearview mirror. Are you kidding me? It was one of those scented trees. That's not why they stopped me. But I could have been a statistic. And so that one resonates with me very, very heavily.
Yeah, LaTanya, hugs to you, this week especially, but every day as well. Thank you for sharing that. That's the reality, for many people who we call friends and who we love. This guy on the screen, Keith, is one of, my favorite people in the world. And we have traveled throughout the country doing these workshops in different places. And some of those places that we show up, I know is not always a safe place for him to be or for us to be together. And when you think about that, it's not for me, and I'll just wrap it up, with this piece of the conversation, because we have others, it's not about, feeling guilty, that I'm white. It's really about acknowledging the benefits and the advantages and the opportunities that I have, and being mindful that not everybody has those advantages, and then being committed to trying to make it an equal playing field, you know, for the people that I love and all the people that I don't know, who look like you, LaTanya, who look like Keith and many others. So we're gonna flip to the next concept, microaggressions, and Keith is gonna lead us through that one. And for this one, you'll see we're really gonna bring it to a college campus.
Yes, thank you, Nancy. Yeah, the microaggressions, I'm sure you've heard that term, especially by now. Here's our working definition. Microaggression is a form of unintended discrimination. It is depicted by the use of known social norms of behavior and or expressions that, while without conscious choice, the user has the same effect as conscious intended discrimination. Many of us experience this. Now, sometimes when we talk about this, people say, well, you know, that happens to everybody. But the difference is, for a lot of people, it doesn't just happen once. It's not a once upon a time story. This happens daily. And it adds up over a lifetime, over a career, over a term, or any basis of time. It's painful. It's like being stabbed 1,000 times. And it is a quiet pain for many people. Now, what I have here for you is some examples of real people who shared the microaggressions they've had to endure. And they have to do it sometimes on a daily basis. So they find themselves in defense when they shouldn't be. The quiet pain. I'm just gonna let you read some of them. Now, what I'd like for you to do, those are examples of microaggressions. Those are real people, and most of them were young people. And again, this quiet pain lasts for a lifetime. And so you have a bunch of people carrying around this pain. So it's any wonder sometimes when they explode and the people who see them don't understand. It didn't happen just last week. It's happened over a lifetime. So what I'd like for you to do, to put in the chat, would you put in there, to answer this question, what are some examples of microaggressions that might be directed at coaches or athletic administrators? What are some examples of microaggressions that might be directed at coaches or athletic administrators? If you could just put that in the chat, that'd be awesome. Oops, I'm still figuring this out, Nancy. Anything? I see Mike Murphy. Mike, you said, wow, your hair is so exotic.
Yes.
Can you expand on that a little bit?
Well, I actually witnessed it a few times with Black women who had hair that was different than most of the people you see in New Hampshire. And a simple hey, you look nice today, what wasn't the case. It was always, wow, how is your hair so exotic like that? You know,
Mm-hmm.
person didn't ask for that kind of attention, but it did come up. A coach once, an administrator another time.
Good point. That happened. I've seen that happen a lot, especially with younger kids in high school and junior high school. Let's see. I'm calling a couple other people. Laney Williams. You kind of explained that the position was not earned, but rather achieved because of your race. Can you expand on that, Laney?
I mean, I can't speak on it personally, as I'm white, but I think that that's kind of a stereotype that you see, not only in athletics, just across the board, that that there are quotas that have to be filled because of race or minority status or whatever it is.
Correct. A lot of times people talk about affirmative action, right? You must have gotten that position because of affirmative action. And but you have to kind of suck it up sometimes and go forward. But the quiet pain of that is endured in that person. It stays there. So their reaction is unbelievable. Let's talk about another term we wanted to address today. It's called implicit bias. Unlike explicit bias, which reflects the attitudes or beliefs that one endorses at the conscious level, implicit bias is the bias in judgment and or behavior that results from subtle cognitive process. Implicit attitudes, implicit stereotypes that often operate at a level below the conscious level and without intentional control. Now, as human beings, we all do this. We all kind of are victims of our own implicit bias. And in some cases, quite frankly, it's a safety mechanism, right? But at the same time, when it comes to people who may be different, it is a huge problem. The key to it is to be aware of it, of our implicit biases. It doesn't make us bad people. It makes us human. But what also makes us human is that we can review, we can explore, and we can research things that will help us improve as human beings with regards to other human beings. In other words, implicit bias refers to attitudes or stereotypes that affect our understanding, actions, and decisions in an unconscious way, making them difficult to control. Let's look at some examples of it. These are just examples that we've gathered over the years. Assuming a woman coming to a hospital is a nurse instead of a doctor, a store clerk feeling the need to tell a Black person the price of an item before telling them the quality of the product. Recruiters assuming that athletes from a certain region share the same characteristics, values, priorities, and or goals. People who talk slowly and deliberate are less intelligent. Assuming someone has a political view based on where they live or where they're from. Assuming someone is racially insensitive based upon their dialect, excuse me. If someone doesn't speak the dominant language of a country, some people think they're less intelligent. Assuming assumptions of sexual orientation based on style, stereotypes of a specific sport and or culture preferences. Example, hairstyle, piercings, types of attire. And the other thing as administrators and coaches, we always have to keep in mind, for those of us who deal with international student athletes, please consider that they may have different or additional examples of implicit bias. It's important that you talk to them and get their feedback, explain what implicit bias means, and kind of debrief them in terms of their experiences. So this is very important to understand. We have to talk to our kids. We have to, before we can truly understand and go beyond lip service, we have to discuss these sometimes uncomfortable topics. It's very important. And I think what happens is then the young people then, they gain a new level of respect. A new level of respect, okay? So let's talk about another term. I think Nancy's gonna lead us through that.
I
one.
am, and
Oh.
to me, this is really, you know, the most important of the terms to me, and I'll tell you why. So the next term that we're going to talk about is anti-racist. The thing about the first three terms, white privilege, microaggressions, implicit bias, is that those are things that are difficult to control. When we talk about being an anti-racist, that is something that is 100% in our control. Some of us will choose to become anti-racist. Others of us will find it too difficult or will not want to. So I'll ask you, Keith, to go to the next slide while I talk about just the, you know, the image that's up here. So one of the best books out right now is How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram Kendi. And the real takeaway from the book, and there are so many, but one of the first ones is this idea that not being a racist, you know, you hear a lot of people say, well, I'm not a racist. I'm not a racist. Well, that does not mean the same thing as being anti-racist. Not being a racist is sort of, you know, neutral. It's not proactive. It's not intentional. It's not taking the side of what's right and what should be done. And so as we look at the last slide, right before we go into our breakout groups, I do want to give you a definition of anti-racism to think about. It's the active process of identifying and eliminating racism by changing systems, organizational structures, policies and practices and attitudes so that power is redistributed and shared equitably. One of the things that I truly believe, and Keith, thank you for the compliment. I do believe what I say. I try to be authentic, and I'm 100% sincere when I say this. If there are people who can take a leadership role and be effective around this issue, it's coaches, it's administrators, and it's student athletes. As we go out into the breakout rooms and we start to talk about not only the terms, but how we move towards becoming anti-racist as individuals, but also as departments and as schools, I would love to challenge you to find your place in the conversation by thinking about what can I intentionally and proactively do every day to be anti-racist. It's not good enough to be neutral. It's not good enough to say, well, not me. If we are not together and individually every single day doing things to show that behaviorally we are not racist, then we will not make progress on this issue. And it's time to make progress. It really is. This is a special moment in time, and I think this time will be different if we don't lose this momentum. And that's how I think we should go into the breakout rooms and really start to think about where do we find ourselves at this moment in time. So Kate, I think you're going to put us out into the breakout rooms, right?
Yeah, thank you, Keith and Nancy. That was wonderful. And thanks for those that participated. We're going to move quickly into breakout rooms. My biggest hope is that our participant number does not drop in the next 30 seconds so that we, you know, stay committed to moving this from listening and learning into conversation. So if you're intimidated by having this small group conversation, I can promise you that, you know, we want this to be a safe, you know, intimate space to share and just dialogue. And I think that you being here and you being in those rooms is just a huge step in the right direction for us as a league. So I want to thank you in advance. A couple really brief ground rules. There will be Keith, Nancy, or a member of the America East staff in the groups. We are observing and listening, trying to help the conversation, but really want to be a discussion between you all, you know, sitting at the campuses, being the coaches. And so we'll have questions to help drive the conversation, but really want to hear from you. So everyone's encouraged to participate. Obviously, please respect other people's points of views. And then it goes without saying, but I will say it, what stays in the group and what is shared in the group is intended to be of confidence of that small group. So please, if someone in your group is sharing their experiencing or opening up, please do not take that and share it outside of your group. And with that, I will open all the rooms. We'll bring you back just a couple minutes before we end here at 1, just to wrap up, and then we'll call it a day. So I'm gonna send everyone off now and just wanna thank you in advance. All right, well, welcome back, everybody. Thanks so much for staying with us here. We're just 1 minute away from 1 p.m., so the timing worked out. I certainly know that in the breakout room that I was in, we had an impactful conversation, and just really appreciate everyone's candor and honesty. So hopefully you had the same experience, and I just wanna thank you all for being here. We have a survey. Again, we'd love to get some feedback, especially since this is a new format for us. But we'll take any feedback you have. You can email me if it can't be captured on the survey. But I just want to again extend my thanks and appreciation to all of you for showing up here today for this really important conversation. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of your day. Hopefully we'll see you on episode 5.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks, Keith. Thanks, Nancy.